Hello, my name is Leon Miller. I'm 35 years old, an infrastructure design engineer at a construction company in Portland, Oregon. If I had to describe my life, it's probably like a technical blueprint. Every line carefully calculated, not overly flashy, but always purposeful. I live by principles, speak little, and believe that with effort, everything will turn out fine. Perhaps that's why I've always strived to keep my small family, Monica, my wife, and Mila, our 10-year-old daughter, safe and loved. Monica, my wife, is 32, an accountant for a local furniture store. She's practical, adept, but sometimes I see a weariness in her eyes she can't hide. Maybe it's the repetitive days, the piling bills, or the pressure of a life that's never easy. Monica has always been the one to keep the fire burning in our home, but I know that flame flickers at times. Then there's Mila, our light. Bright and lively, she loves to draw, and her pictures, fields of flowers, little houses by a lake, make me wonder how such a small soul can hold such a vibrant world. Our little family lives in an apartment in Beaverton, a suburb of Portland. It's not luxurious, but it's cozy, with faded cream-colored walls, a sofa Monica and I bought from a thrift store when we got married, and Mila's drawings plastered on the fridge. To me, it's everything. Every evening after a long day at the construction site, I push open the door, smell Monica's toasted bread, hear Mila's giggles as she recounts her school day, and feel my heart lighten. Those are the moments I know I'm living right, that every ounce of exhaustion is worth it. We lived like that, simply, not affluent but content. I thought as long as the three of us were together, nothing was insurmountable. But life, like a blueprint I've checked 100 times, sometimes hides tiny flaws you don't notice, until everything collapses. It all started to change one autumn morning when golden leaves covered the path to the park near our home. Mila, as usual, was getting ready for school. I still remember that day clearly. She wore her favorite green sweater, her blonde hair tied high, humming a song while coloring a new drawing. But when I called her for breakfast, she froze, clutching her head, her eyes squeezed shut. "Dad, I'm dizzy," she said, her voice faint. I rushed to her, helping her sit on the sofa. Monica, mid-coffee, turned around, her face flashing with worry. "Probably studied too much," she said, trying to reassure both me and herself. In the days that followed, Mila's dizzy spells grew more frequent. Once she fainted in class, sending her teacher into a panic and prompting a call to us. I dropped a meeting at work and sped to the school. When I arrived, Mila was in the nurse's office, pale but forcing a smile. "I'm okay, Dad," she said, though her small hands trembled as they held mine. I hugged her, hiding the growing fear in my chest. Monica and I decided to take Mila to the hospital. We sat in the waiting room, the sterile smell of antiseptic heavy in the cold air. Monica held my hand, but we were both silent. Then the test results came, hitting me like a fall into an abyss. Mila had a bone marrow disorder. The doctor explained, his voice low and careful, that the condition wasn't immediately life-threatening but required long-term treatment. The costs for medication, tests, and hospital stays could run into thousands of dollars a month. My ears rang as I listened, clutching Monica's trembling hand. Mila, sitting beside us, looked up with clear eyes as if she didn't yet grasp what was happening. On the drive home, no one spoke. Mila fell asleep in the back seat, while Monica stared out the window, her gaze distant. I drove, trying to focus on the road, but my mind swirled with unanswerable questions. How would we manage? How could I protect my daughter? How could I keep this family from breaking apart? The weeks that followed changed our lives. I took on extra projects, working late into the night, sometimes not getting home until midnight. Each time I entered the apartment, Mila was already asleep, and Monica sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and paperwork. I tried to comfort her, but my words felt inadequate. "Leon, don't you see things getting worse?" she asked one night, her voice heavy with exhaustion. I didn't answer, just held her hand, hoping the gesture could say what I couldn't. But the truth was, I was exhausted too. Nights spent at my desk under fluorescent lights, poring over blueprints, felt like a race against time. I needed money, lots of it, to keep Mila healthy. Every time I looked at her, saw her smile still shining despite her weakening body, I told myself to be stronger. But deep down, I knew I was losing control. Monica changed too. Once patient, she grew irritable. Our conversations dwindled, replaced by small arguments. "All you do is work, Leon. Do you ever think about how I feel?" She snapped one night when I came home late again. I wanted to explain, to say I was doing it all for Mila, for our family, but my throat tightened. "Don't you see I'm trying?" I shot back, my voice just as sharp. Mila, in her room, must have heard. I heard her door close softly, and my heart felt crushed. Our once cozy apartment now felt stifling. Hospital bills, medications, and daily expenses drained our bank account faster than we could keep up. I noticed Monica's eyes no longer looked at me the same way. Once I caught her sitting alone in the kitchen, holding her phone, her gaze empty. "You okay?" I asked. She said nothing, just turned away. The days that followed grew tenser. Arguments became more frequent. Laughter in the house was replaced by shouting. Once Monica slammed a glass down on the table, yelling, "I can't take this house anymore." I stood there watching her, unsure what to do. Mila, in the corner of the room, quietly hugged a pillow, her eyes brimming with tears. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, to shout at Monica that we needed each other, but I just stood there, helpless. That night I lay on the sofa, unable to sleep. The ticking clock seemed to count down our happy days. I thought of Mila, her pain, the piling bills, and Monica, the woman I once loved more than anything, now slipping away from me day by day. I wondered, had I done something wrong? Was I not enough to hold this family together? The days that followed grew increasingly stifling in our home. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to Mila and Monica. Mila still went to school, still drew, but I noticed a subtle sadness in her eyes that was hard to define. Monica, meanwhile, seemed to grow more distant by the day. In the mornings, she prepared for work with an unusual haste, applying makeup more carefully, wearing a new perfume, a sweet but sharp scent, unfamiliar, unlike the Monica I knew. "I'm meeting friends tonight," she'd say lightly, avoiding my eyes. I'd nod, watching her leave. Mila, with a child's sensitivity, noticed the change too. One afternoon, while I was checking her homework, she hesitated, her small hands twisting together. "Dad," she said, her voice low as if afraid someone might hear. "Mom's been acting weird lately." I looked up, my heart tightening. "Weird how, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. Mila lowered her head, her finger tracing the corner of her drawing paper. "She's always taking her phone to her room, whispering for a long time. Once when I walked in, she quickly hung up and looked at me like I did something wrong." She looked up, her eyes a mix of curiosity and worry. "Is Mom mad at me, Dad?" I pulled Mila into my arms, hiding the unease rising within me. "No, sweetheart. Mom's just tired, probably stressed from work." I said it, but I didn't believe my own words. Mila nodded, but I could tell she wasn't reassured. That night, after Mila was asleep, I lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, trying to push away images of Monica. Monica with her distant eyes, her late-night outings, that unfamiliar perfume. Then one morning, while Monica was still asleep, I noticed her coat hanging on a chair. I wasn't the type to snoop. I never had been. But a corner of paper sticking out of the pocket caught my eye. I pulled it out and my heart stopped. It was a receipt from an upscale restaurant in downtown Portland for a dinner for two, dated last Wednesday, the night Monica said she was staying late to finish paperwork. I held the receipt, reading it over and over, searching for a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was with a colleague, a work dinner. But why hadn't she mentioned it? Why lie? I started losing sleep. Each night when Monica came home, she'd slip quietly into the bedroom without a word to me. I looked at her, searching for signs of the Monica I loved, the woman who stood by me through tough times, who laughed brightly when Mila drew her first picture, who once held me and said we'd be together forever. But now, I saw only a stranger. I wanted to ask her, to shout what she was doing to our family, but I was afraid that her answer would destroy everything. Deep inside, a vague fear took shape, that this small family, the one I'd sacrificed everything to protect, was slipping through my fingers. Not because of poverty or illness, but because love, the thing I once believed was unbreakable, was cracking, and I didn't know when it had started. The unease grew quietly, like a crack spreading through glass, until one evening when the storm hit without warning. I'd just come home from work, exhausted after a long day at the construction site, my coat still carrying the scent of dust and cement. Mila was at the dining table, engrossed in a new drawing, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Dad's home," she cheered, running to hug me. I bent down, kissed her forehead, and tried to hide the weight in my heart. Moments later, as Mila returned to her room, I turned and saw Monica standing in front of the living room mirror, her hair lightly curled, wearing a tight black dress, the sweet, sharp scent of unfamiliar perfume wafting from her. She held her purse, scrolling quickly through her phone, a secretive smile on her lips. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice gentle but tinged with curiosity. Monica flinched, her hand pausing on the phone screen. She turned, her eyes briefly flustered before turning cold. "Meeting friends, like usual," she replied evenly, but I noticed her grip tighten on her purse strap. I took a deep breath, feeling a jolt like electricity run through me. "You've been meeting friends a lot lately," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "Is there something you're hiding from me?" That question lit the fuse of a bomb. Monica spun around, her eyes blazing with anger. "What are you doing, Leon? Spying on me? Don't you trust your own wife?" Her voice was sharp, cutting like a knife. I stood still, feeling the heat rise to my head. "I'm not spying," I replied, struggling to stay calm. "But you've changed, Monica. I don't know where you go or what you do anymore. I just want to understand." Monica let out a scornful laugh, her smile dripping with sarcasm. "Understand? You've got time for that, huh, Leon? While our daughter is sick, you're busy suspecting me. Do you know how exhausted I am? Do you know what I have to endure in this house?" Her words hit me like hammer blows to the chest. I wanted to argue, to say I was working myself to the bone for Mila, for us, but my throat tightened. Instead, I heard myself say, my voice trembling, "Mila noticed too, Monica. She said you've been whispering on the phone, hanging up when she comes near. She's worried, you know that?" Monica froze, but only for a second. Then she let out a cold, bitter laugh, her eyes flashing with fury. "Mila, you're believing a child now? She's sick, she's sensitive, she's imagining things and accusing her own mother. And you're naive enough to listen to a kid." Her words were a sharp, cold blade slicing through me. I stood there, unable to believe what I'd heard. Mila, our fragile, sensitive girl fighting a cruel illness, called an accuser by her own mother? I wanted to scream, to ask Monica how she could say something so heartless, but I stayed silent, my mind a tangle of anger and pain. Then a small sob from the corner of the room snapped me back. I turned, my heart clenching as I saw Mila standing behind the door, her eyes brimming with tears, her small hands clutching her new drawing. She'd heard everything. I called, my voice hoarse, but she burst into tears, running to her room, the door slamming shut. Monica looked after her but didn't move. Instead, she turned to me, her voice icy. "See, Leon? This is the house you want me to keep living in? Suffocating, full of suspicion, not a moment's peace." She grabbed her purse, slammed the door, and stormed out, leaving me in the cold apartment with the sound of rain and Mila's muffled sobs. I ran to Mila's room, knocking softly. "Mila, sweetheart, open the door for Dad." There was no answer, only choked sobs. I pushed the door open and found her curled up on her bed, clutching her pillow, her face streaked with tears. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't want Mom to be mad. I just want her to be happy like before." Her words tore my heart apart. I sat down, pulling her into my arms, feeling her small body shake. "It's not your fault, Mila," I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "Mom and Dad are just having a hard time. Don't worry, it'll be okay." I soothed Mila to sleep, softly singing the lullaby Monica used to sing when she was little. But each note, each word, only reminded me of the days we were happy, days that now felt like distant memories. When Mila finally drifted off, I sat by her, watching her pale face, overwhelmed by an indescribable pain. I didn't know what I'd done wrong, why Monica had changed, or how to hold this family together. All I knew was that, in that moment, everything seemed to be crumbling. All night I sat on the sofa waiting for Monica to return. The rain outside mingled with the ticking clock, each second stretching endlessly. I looked at Mila's drawing on the table, the three of us holding hands under sunlight, and felt a deep sadness. I wanted to believe Monica was just tired, that she still loved me, loved Mila, that it was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth wasn't that simple. I held my head, trying to banish the image of the restaurant receipt, the phone conversations, and Monica's distant eyes. The next morning, as faint dawn light filtered through the window, I heard the key turn in the lock. Monica stepped in, her hair wet from the rain, her face cold. She didn't look at me, just silently shed her coat and headed to the bathroom. "Monica," I called, my voice hoarse after a sleepless night. She paused but didn't turn. "We need to talk," I said, but she only shook her head. "I'm tired, Leon. Later." Then she closed the door, leaving me standing in the silent apartment, feeling like the world was slipping away. The days that followed were suffocatingly heavy. Monica left early and came home late, sometimes not at all. When she was home, she barely spoke, answering in clipped tones when I asked questions. She avoided my eyes, avoided Mila. I became the sole caretaker, taking Mila to school, checking her homework, reading her bedtime stories. Mila rarely mentioned her mother, but I saw her withdrawing. Her drawings no longer vibrant. Instead, they carried muted tones, lonely images. A girl standing alone by a lake, no father, no mother. I tried to keep things running as usual, work, caring for Mila, paying bills. But each night, sitting in the quiet apartment, I felt the warmth of our family had vanished. Monica was still here, but like a ghost, present yet not truly there. I looked at her, searching for a sign of love, of connection, but found only coldness. And inside me, that fear, the fear of losing our family, grew like a wave ready to swallow everything. One early winter morning, as I was reviewing blueprints at the office, my boss called me into his office. A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, he placed a thick stack of documents in front of me. "Leon," he said, his voice low but weighty, "the company just landed a major infrastructure project in Seattle, a new bridge in the port area. We want you to lead the design team. If you do well, there's a substantial bonus and a chance for a promotion." I sat there, absorbing his words, feeling like a ray of light had pierced the darkness. The bonus, if as significant as he implied, could cover months of Mila's treatment, pay off credit card debt, and maybe even leave enough to take her somewhere to rest. But as I looked at him, the initial excitement was quickly overshadowed by a vague unease. "The project lasts 2 weeks, Leon," he continued. "You'll need to be in Seattle full-time. I know you've got a lot going on with your family, but this is a big opportunity. You deserve it." I nodded, thanked him, but as I left his office, my legs felt heavy. 2 weeks. 2 weeks away from Mila, from the apartment, from Monica, whom I wasn't even sure I understood anymore. Driving home, my mind was a mess. I thought of Mila, her collapsing in my arms from exhaustion, her sudden dizzy spells, her bright but frail eyes. Could I leave her? Could Monica handle caring for Mila while I was gone, with her heart and mind where they were? That evening, I sat by Mila's bedside, watching her sleep. The glow of the nightlight illuminated her face, highlighting her tangled blonde hair and long, trembling lashes. She looked peaceful, but I knew her body was fighting a cruel illness. I gently stroked her hair, thinking of the days we'd spent drawing, laughing, dreaming of far-off trips. Then I thought of Monica, her late-night outings, her distant smile, the restaurant receipts still haunting me. I wanted to believe that despite the gap between us, Monica's maternal instincts would ensure she'd care for Mila properly. I had to believe that. For Mila, for her future, I couldn't pass up this opportunity. The next morning, I told Monica about the project. She was making coffee, her back to me, her hair tied up as usual. "I'm going to Seattle for 2 weeks," I said carefully. It's a big project. If it goes well, there'll be a bonus, enough to cover Mila's needs for a while. Monica paused but didn't turn around. Is that so? She said flatly. Good. Do it. I waited for some reaction. A question, a word of encouragement, even a glance. But there was nothing. She continued pouring coffee, as if I'd just mentioned the weather. I swallowed my disappointment, telling myself she was just tired. But as she left the house in a new dress, the familiar scent of her perfume lingering by the door, I couldn't stop thinking. She didn't care anymore. The day before I left, I spent the evening with Mila. I sat with her, checked her homework, told her stories about the bridges I'd designed. Her eyes sparkled as she listened, occasionally interrupting to ask, "Dad, is that bridge as pretty as the ones in my drawings?" I laughed, ruffling her hair. "Even prettier because I'll build it for you." Before bedtime, I reminded her to take her medicine, not to stay up late studying, and promised, "When I get back, you'll get a big surprise." Mila smiled, hugging me tightly. "I just want you to come back soon," she whispered. Her words stung, but I kissed her forehead and said, "I'll be back quick, sweetheart." Seattle greeted me with drizzle and biting cold. I stayed in a small hotel near the port where the project was underway. Work started immediately with long meetings, urgent blueprint revisions, and pressure from the engineering team. But I didn't complain. Whenever I felt tired, I thought of Mila, her smile, the expensive medications we needed. I told myself it would all be worth it, that this trip would be a new start for our family. For the first few days, I called home every evening. Mila always answered, her voice chirping about school, her new drawings, the neighbor's cat she loved. "Mom's been nicer lately, Dad," she said once, sparking a flicker of hope in me. She even baked cookies for me. I smiled, asked about Monica, but Mila would often say, "Mom's busy, she'll probably call you later." I nodded, knowing Monica wouldn't call. Those calls were the only medicine keeping me going while away, but each time I hung up, I felt an emptiness in my chest. Work in Seattle grew intense. Meetings stretched past midnight, reports needed urgent submission, and technical issues kept piling up, leaving me barely time to breathe. I'd return to the hotel at 1 a.m., body aching, collapsing onto the bed. Some nights I'd pick up my phone to call Mila, but stop, realizing it was too late. "I'll call tomorrow," I told myself, but tomorrow got swallowed by the whirlwind of work. I reassured myself it was just a few more days, that this project would change everything. For Mila, for our family. One evening, while checking emails in my hotel room, my phone buzzed. It was Mila. "Dad, I miss you," she said softly. I smiled, my heart warming. "I miss you too, sweetheart. You doing okay? Is Mom taking good care of you?" Mila hesitated. "Mom. She's been out a lot, but I'm fine, don't worry." I heard a tremor in her voice and my heart tightened. "I'll be home soon," I said, forcing cheer into my tone. "Just a few more days and you'll get that new paint set." Mila giggled, and it gave me strength. In the final days in Seattle, I worked like a machine, pushing to finish everything early. I wanted to go home, to hug Mila, to look into Monica's eyes and find some trace of what we used to have. I thought about the bonus, paying off debts, taking Mila to a park to draw by a lake. I thought of better days when our family was whole. Hope and worry intertwined in me like two ropes knotted tightly together. I believed this trip was a chance, a light at the end of the tunnel. But I didn't know that when I returned, that light would go out, leaving a darkness I could never have imagined. The project in Seattle exceeded expectations. Thanks to the team's relentless efforts, we finished 3 days ahead of schedule. When my boss clapped me on the shoulder, saying the bonus would hit my account soon, a spark of hope flared within me. I imagined Mila's joy at a new paint set, Monica's smile when she heard we could pay off some debt. I hurriedly packed, booked the earliest bus back to Portland, and as the Oregon forests passed by the window in the glow of sunset, I told myself everything would be okay. As long as I got home, as long as I was with Mila, we could fix things. But when I pushed open the door to our Beaverton apartment, a chilling silence greeted me. No sound of Mila's laughter, no smell of Monica's toasted bread. No hum of the TV that usually played in the living room. The apartment was dark, lit only by streetlights filtering through the window. "Monica? Mila?" I called, my voice echoing in the empty space. No one answered. I flicked on the light, checking every room, my heart racing. Mila's bed was empty, her blanket neatly folded. The kitchen showed no signs of dinner. I opened the fridge, finding a few expired yogurt containers as if no one had touched it in days. I grabbed my phone and called Monica. The line rang endlessly, then went to voicemail. I called again, once, twice, but still no answer. I tried Mila, hoping to hear her chirpy voice, but got only the same hollow ring. My heart pounded, a cold dread creeping down my spine. "They're just out for a walk," I told myself, trying to stay calm. Maybe Monica took Mila to the park or a friend's house. But why hadn't anyone told me? Why were both their phones unreachable? I sank onto the sofa, hands trembling, searching for a logical explanation. Then my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. I answered, my voice hoarse. "Hello?" A calm but urgent female voice came through. "Mr. Miller, this is a nurse from Portland Central Hospital. Your daughter Mila is here. We need you to come sign some paperwork. There's no one with her right now." My body froze as if the blood in my veins stopped flowing. "Mila, what's wrong with her?" I asked, my voice shaking. The nurse hesitated. "She had severe anemia and was admitted 3 days ago. She's stable now, but you should come immediately." I don't remember hanging up or rushing out of the house. I only recall speeding through Portland's streets, rain pelting down, traffic lights blurring in my eyes. Mila, my little girl, was in the hospital, alone, and I hadn't known. Where was Monica? Where was she when our daughter needed her most? The questions swirled in my mind, but I had no time for answers. I just needed to be with Mila now. At the hospital, I ran to the emergency ward, breathless. A nurse led me to a cold hallway where I saw Mila through a glass window. She lay still, surrounded by IV lines and heart monitors. Her small face was pale, her lips chapped, but her chest rose and fell faintly. I stood there, gripping the doorframe, feeling everything inside me collapse. Mila, my light, was lying there, and I hadn't been with her. I'd left her to go to Seattle, chasing an opportunity that now seemed meaningless. A middle-aged nurse with kind eyes touched my shoulder. "Mr. Miller, she's stable now, but she needs special care." I nodded, swallowing the pain. "Who brought her here?" I asked, my voice rough. The nurse hesitated. "Her grandparents. They brought her in 3 days ago, handled the admission, but left afterward. They only visited once yesterday." My blood surged. Monica's parents, her grandparents, had left Mila here alone for 3 days? "Did they say anything?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The nurse shook her head. I thanked her, but inside a storm raged. I pulled out my phone, calling Monica again, then her parents. No one answered. I couldn't stay at the hospital any longer, couldn't just sit and wait. I needed answers. I needed to know what had happened to my daughter. I drove straight to Monica's parents' house in suburban Portland, my mind a mess, my heart constricting. When I knocked on their door, night had fallen. Monica's mother, Helen, opened it, her expression cold. "Leon," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. Monica's father, Richard, stood behind her, silent. "Mila's in the hospital," I said, my voice trembling with anger and pain. "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did you leave her alone?" Helen frowned, crossing her arms. "She's your daughter, Leon, not ours. We brought her to the hospital, did what needed to be done. What more do you want?" I stood there, unable to believe what I'd heard. Did what needed to be done? You left her alone in a hospital. Mila's only 10. She needs her family. Helen's eyes narrowed. "Family? You should ask Monica where she is. She left Mila with us and went off on a trip with a friend. She said she needed a break, and frankly, we think she deserved it. We looked after the girl for a few days. That's more than enough. And you're here questioning us?" Her words hit me like a punch to the face. I stood frozen, my eyes empty, unable to comprehend. Monica? On a trip? With a friend? While Mila lay in the hospital fighting a cruel illness? I wanted to scream, to lash out, but my body felt paralyzed. Richard spoke up, his voice calm but no less cutting. Monica's young, Leon. She has a right to find happiness elsewhere, someone more worthy. You can't keep her trapped in this struggling life forever. His words poured fuel on the fire, but I didn't react. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, fighting to contain my rage. Thanks for being honest, I said, my voice low and icy. Then I turned and left their house without looking back. That night, I returned to the hospital, sitting silently in the hallway. Through the glass, I watched Mila sleep, her small shoulders rising and falling under the dim light. I wanted to go in, to hold her, to tell her dad was here, that everything would be okay. But I couldn't move. I just sat there, my shoulders trembling, choking back sobs. Mila, my little girl, had been here alone while her mother went on a trip, while I was caught up in Seattle. I'd failed, not just with Monica, but with Mila. In the darkness of that hospital hallway, I vowed I'd never let my daughter be alone again. The days that followed, I barely left the hospital. I took a few days off work, citing a family emergency. My boss, pleased with the Seattle project's success, agreed immediately, telling me to focus on Mila. I sat by her bedside, holding her hand, feeling her small, fragile fingers in my palm. Mila was slowly recovering, her smile returning, though still faint. Dad, I dreamed I painted a huge picture of our family by a lake, she said, her voice clear but tired. I smiled, telling her funny stories about the lazy cat at the construction site, about the time I nearly spilled coffee on a blueprint. Mila giggled, and each laugh of hers seemed to dispel the darkness in my heart. I did everything to help her forget the pain, to forget those lonely days in the hospital. I brought her favorite picture books, sang old lullabies, and even tried drawing with her, though my clumsy lines always made her laugh. Dad, you're terrible at this, she teased, and I pretended to sulk, just to see that smile linger a little longer. After nearly 2 weeks of intensive treatment, Mila's condition stabilized. The doctor moved her to a regular room, and I felt like I could breathe again, but the relief was short-lived. One morning, while Mila slept, the doctor called me into a private room. An older man with calm eyes, he sat across from me, holding a thick file. "Mr. Miller," he began slowly, "we've reviewed Mila's recent test results and her response to treatment." I nodded, my heart pounding, hoping for good news. But then he sighed, his eyes heavy. "Her condition is worsening. With the current treatment plan, we can only maintain her health for about 4 to 5 years. His words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I sat there, unable to move, unable to breathe. 4 to 5 years? Mila, my little girl, only had a few years left. I wanted to scream, to ask if he was mistaken, to beg for a miracle. But I just sat, my hands clenched so tightly my nails dug into my skin. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice hoarse. The doctor nodded, his eyes full of regret. "We'll do everything we can, but you need to prepare yourself." Prepare myself. How could I prepare to lose my daughter? How could I accept that Mila, my only light, wouldn't be here? I left the doctor's room, walking aimlessly. I stood in the hospital hallway for a long time, staring out the window at the relentless Portland rain. I thought of Mila, her drawings, her smile, and felt my heart tear apart. But I couldn't let her know. Mila mustn't know her time was running out. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and returned to her room, forcing a smile I hoped would hide my pain. That evening, I sat by Mila's bed, holding her hand. She looked at me, her eyes clear. "Dad, I'll get better, right?" she asked softly. I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Everything will be okay, sweetheart. Dad's here always." But as I spoke, I knew the real battle was just beginning. I had to be strong, not just for Mila, but for myself. I had to give her the happiest days possible, no matter how painfully short they might be. Mila was discharged a week later. I brought her back to our little Beaverton apartment where her drawings still covered the walls. I tried to keep things as they were, making breakfast for Mila, taking her to school, checking her homework. But every time I looked at her, I saw the hourglass in my heart draining faster. I wanted to stop time, to keep Mila forever, but I knew that was impossible. Then Monica returned. I heard the door open and she walked in, pulling a small suitcase. She wore a new coat, her hair curled, looking radiant as if fresh from a long vacation. She glanced at me, then at Mila, and gave a faint smile. "Hey, you two doing okay?" she asked, her voice flat, as if unaware of what had happened. I stood there, hands clenched, fighting the anger rising within me. I wanted to scream, to tell her Mila had nearly died, that she'd been alone in the hospital while Monica was off traveling. But I said nothing. I'd decided to keep Mila's hospital stay a secret, not for Monica's sake, but for Mila's. I didn't want her to hear arguments, to endure more pain. "We're fine," I said coldly, my eyes fixed on her. Monica shrugged, set her suitcase down, and went to the kitchen, acting as if everything was normal. Mila, from the corner of the room, quietly hugged her new drawing, her eyes sad. "Mom," she called softly, but Monica only turned, giving a strained smile. "I'm tired, Mila. Let's talk tomorrow, okay?" Then she went to her room and closed the door. The days that followed grew heavier. Monica was there, but not truly present. She left early, came home late, sometimes not at all. When she was home, she sat silently, scrolling through her phone, ignoring me and Mila. I cared for Mila alone, taking her to checkups, ensuring she took her medicine on time. Each time I looked at Monica, she seemed more like a stranger. Then one evening, as Mila slept, Monica looked at me, her voice laced with sarcasm. "All you do is make me and Mila miserable, Leon. Do you ever think about what I need?" Her words were the final drop that overflowed the cup. I stood there, looking at the woman I'd loved, promised to build a family with. But now I saw only a stranger who'd abandoned Mila, abandoned me. I didn't speak, didn't blame, didn't complain. My silence unnerved her, but she quickly turned away, as if unwilling to face me. A few days later, I filed for divorce. I didn't want drama or arguments. I only asked for custody of Mila, the only thing that mattered. Monica didn't object. She signed the papers with a chilling coldness, as if leaving this family was something she'd long awaited. Before she left, she stood at the door, looking at me one last time. "At least now I'm free of the burden," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Her words hurt more than any wound I'd ever felt, but I stayed silent, watching her pull her suitcase out of the apartment, the door closing behind her. I turned back, walking to Mila's room. She was asleep, her face peaceful, unaware her mother had left. I sat beside her, holding her close, whispering, "I won't let you be alone again." Tears fell silently, but I knew from now on it was just Mila and me, and I'd do everything to protect her, even if we only had a few years, even if my heart was shattered. After Monica left, I decided we couldn't stay in the Beaverton apartment. It held too many memories, days of happiness mixed with nights of arguments. I sold the apartment using the money from the Seattle project and the bonus to buy a smaller house in Lake Oswego, near the lake and a park. The house wasn't large, just enough for the two of us, but from the window I could see the lake shimmering under the sunlight, and Mila could sit and draw by the park, where breezes carried the scent of fresh grass. I wanted her to have a peaceful place where every day was a gift. Mila loved Lake Oswego from the first day. "Dad, this lake is like the one in my drawings," she exclaimed, clutching the paint set I'd bought in Seattle. I smiled, watching her run to the lakeshore, her blonde hair flying. I knew her time was limited, but I refused to let that shadow haunt our days together. I wanted Mila to live fully, to be happy, free from worries about her illness or the wounds her mother left behind. I stayed in touch with my parents in Boulder, Colorado. They'd quietly supported me through the tough years, always calling to check in, sending handwritten cards with simple words of encouragement. "You're stronger than you think, Leon," my mom once said over the phone, her voice trembling. I didn't share much about Monica or what happened, but I knew they understood. They didn't ask, only reminded me to bring Mila to visit when I could. Sometimes I took Mila to Boulder, where my parents lived in a small wooden house at the foot of the mountains. Those days were like a healing balm. Mila helped my mom garden, carefully weeding and planting the purple violets she loved. I helped my dad fix the porch roof, listening to his stories about his younger days. In those moments, with sunlight filtering through the trees and Mila's laughter echoing from the garden, I felt a rare peace, a feeling I'd almost forgotten. "Dad, I want to stay here forever," Mila said once as we sat on the backyard swing watching the mountains fade into the sunset. I hugged her, smiling. "We'll come back, sweetheart." Many times. But deep down, I knew each trip was my attempt to hold on to time, to keep Mila with me a little longer. Thanks to the Seattle success, I was promoted to lead engineer for regional project oversight. The steady income was enough to cover Mila's treatments and keep our life from being too strained. I worked hard, but no longer let work consume me. Every day I made time for Mila. Mornings eating breakfast together, usually toast with strawberry jam she loved. Evenings cooking together, watching old cartoons or walking by the lake. Mila loved sitting by the shore, painting landscapes, while I sat nearby pretending to read but really just watching her, memorizing every moment. Mila grew into a gentle, art-loving teenager, always optimistic. I never told her about the doctor's prognosis, unwilling to let the shadow of her illness dim her days. She didn't know each day brought her closer to the end. She kept painting, laughing, telling me about her dreams of becoming an artist, of creating grand paintings for museums. "I'll paint the whole world for you, Dad," she said. And I nodded, smiling, hiding the pain tearing at my heart. Each year we wrote a list of little dreams. Mila called it our happiness map. We listed simple things: planting a flower bed in front of the house, watching fireworks on the 4th of July, painting the lake in autumn. I tried to fulfill each one, no matter how small, knowing it was how Mila could live fully. Once we planted yellow daisies in the front yard, Mila covered in dirt but beaming. "Dad, these flowers will bloom forever, right?" she asked. I nodded, though I knew nothing lasts forever. 5 years passed in a blink. Mila was now a 15-year-old, taller but still delicate, with bright eyes and a smile that never faded. I did everything to keep her happy, but each routine checkup brought the doctor's worried looks and worsening test results. I hid it all, telling Mila she was getting better, that everything would be fine. But inside, I knew time was running out. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves fell around the lake, Mila sat painting on a park bench. I sat beside her, reading a newspaper but secretly watching her. She was working on a scene of the lake with white swans gliding across the water. "Dad, this one's a gift for you," she said, her voice cheerful. I smiled, about to reply, when she suddenly froze, clutching her chest, her pencil falling to the ground. "Dad," she whispered, then collapsed unconscious. I rushed to her, holding her, shouting her name in panic. Everything blurred. I called an ambulance, held Mila on the way to the hospital, praying, begging anyone listening to save her. At the hospital, the doctor looked at me, his eyes heavy. "Her body's no longer responding to treatment," he said, his voice low. "She has very little time left." I stood there, feeling the world collapse. Mila, my little girl, my light, was slipping away forever. In her final hours, I sat by her bed, holding her hand. She was weak, but her eyes still shone with love. "Dad," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I'm not scared. I was so happy being with you." I leaned down, kissing her forehead, tears streaming. "You're the best thing in my life," I said, my voice breaking. Mila smiled, a peaceful smile, then closed her eyes, leaving me forever in an unfillable void. I held her, silent, unable to speak. Only one promise escaped my heart: "I'll live the rest of my life for you." I clung to Mila, feeling her last warmth, knowing my life would never be whole again. Mila's funeral was dignified but simple, just as she lived. Friends, colleagues, and Lake Oswego neighbors came to say goodbye. They hugged me, saying I was an exemplary father, that I'd given Mila a beautiful life, however short. I stood by her casket, surrounded by her paintings, my heart in pieces. Mila was gone, but her smile, her love lingered like sunlight on the lake. After the funeral, my life slowly found its rhythm again, though it was a rhythm dimmed without its former light. I returned to work, diving back into technical blueprints, meetings, and long days at construction sites. My colleagues looked at me with respect, not just for my skills, but for my resilience. They didn't say it aloud, but I saw in their eyes a mix of admiration and pity. "Leon, you're really strong," one colleague said, clapping my shoulder. I gave a faint smile and nodded, but inside I knew I wasn't strong. I was just surviving, keeping my promise to Mila. A year later, I was tasked with leading the Fremont Bridge reconstruction, a massive project in Oregon. It was a huge challenge, but I threw myself into it with everything I had, as if building that bridge could rebuild a piece of my broken heart. I worked day and night, checking every detail, coordinating with the engineering team, ensuring perfection. When the bridge was completed, standing tall over Portland, the local press called it a new symbol of human resilience and will. I stood by the bridge, watching the Willamette River flow quietly below, and thought of Mila. If she were here, she'd paint this bridge with vibrant lines and sunlight streaming through. The project's success elevated me to new heights. The company promoted me to Northwest Regional Engineering Director, a position I'd never dreamed of when I started my career. Local newspapers and TV stations sought me out, calling me the man who rose from tragedy. They interviewed me, asking about the bridge, my journey. During one interview, I looked into the camera and said, "Nothing is more enduring than human resilience." The quote was everywhere, on papers, on TV, in articles praising me. But each time I heard it, I thought only of Mila, of her strength facing her illness, and I knew my resilience came from her. Despite the accolades, I lived simply in the small house by Lake Oswego. I never spoke of my pain, never shared it with anyone. Colleagues, friends, even my parents knew I carried an unhealed wound, but I didn't want them to see it. I quietly remembered Mila, her smile, her laugh, her paintings. Each time I passed the park where she used to draw, I stopped, breathing in the fresh air, feeling her presence beside me. One late afternoon, as the golden-orange sunlight stretched across the lake, I returned home from a long day at the office. I froze at the sight before my porch. Monica and her parents, Helen and Richard. They looked worn, their clothes disheveled, their eyes avoiding mine. Monica was thinner, her once lustrous hair now tangled, her eyes red from crying. Her parents stood behind her, heads bowed, unable to meet my gaze. I stood there, feeling an odd calm. "Come in," I said evenly, opening the door. In the living room, I brewed tea, setting 3 cups on the table. Monica sat across from me, her hands twisting together, her eyes wavering. "Leon," she began, her voice trembling, then dropped to her knees, tears streaming. "Please, can you forgive me? I was wrong. He abandoned me, left me for a younger, wealthier woman." She sobbed, her voice choked. "I have nothing left, Leon. I know I was wrong to leave you, to leave Mila." Mila's name from her lips made my heart clench. But I stayed silent, just watching. Helen spoke up, her voice softer than the coldness of years past. "We regret it too, Leon. We shouldn't have left Mila, shouldn't have said those things to you. Now out there, people scorn us, judge us." Richard nodded, his eyes heavy. "We want to make it right. Give Monica a chance to come back." Their words echoed, but they felt distant. I looked at Monica, at her parents, and realized a painful truth. They weren't here out of genuine remorse. They came because I was successful now, because of my reputation, my role as Northwest Regional Engineering Director. They didn't want Monica back with me. They wanted her back with a successful man. I sat there, sipping my tea, letting the silence stretch. Monica sobbed, repeating, "I still love you, Leon. I really do." But the sad smile on my lips was answer enough. I looked at the woman who was once my world and said, my voice gentle but firm, "I forgave you long ago, Monica. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Some wounds can only close, not heal. She stopped crying, staring at me, her eyes full of confusion. Helen and Richard sat silent, at a loss for words. The room was heavy, but I felt lighter, as if I'd shed a burden. I stood, showing them to the door. The afternoon sun warmed my face, calm and serene. Monica turned, about to say something, but I shook my head. "I wish you happiness," I said, then closed the door. They left, their figures fading into the sunset, and I knew it was the last time I'd see them. That night I sat by the lake under the tree where Mila used to paint. I opened her small diary where she'd scrawled, "I want Dad to find true happiness. Don't go back to what hurt you." I read it over and over, tears rolling down my cheeks, but this time they weren't heavy. I closed the diary, looked at the calm water reflecting the moonlight, and smiled. Mila was right. I'd learned to let go, not just of Monica, not just of the past, but of the pain in my heart. I stood, breathing in the cool night air, feeling a lightness I hadn't known in years. After all the upheavals, I chose a quiet life by Lake Oswego. Each morning I woke early, brewed a cup of coffee, and walked around the lake. I liked to pause under the old tree where Mila and I used to watch sunsets, where she'd giggle when a squirrel darted by. I stood there, listening to the water lap gently against the shore, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. In the days when Mila was still here, I was always racing against time, bills, and fears. Now, in the stillness of the lake, I found a small corner to heal, to learn how to live without letting pain consume me. I no longer held grudges, not against Monica, her parents, or even fate. I understood that forgiveness wasn't about accepting others' wrongs, but about freeing myself from hatred. I'd once been angry with Monica, hurt by what she'd done, but now I felt only a lightness. She'd chosen her path, and I'd chosen mine. Mila taught me that true love doesn't cling or possess. It lives on in your heart, the way I still felt Mila every day. I learned that love can't always be held onto, but true care never fades. Though Mila was gone, she remained in my small habits. Each morning, slicing toast and spreading strawberry jam, I remembered how she'd take a big bite and grin, jam smeared on her lips. Each evening, walking by the lake, I recalled her running ahead, pointing at a swan and saying, "Dad, I'm going to paint that." Her drawings still hung in the house, and each time I looked at them, I smiled. A gentle smile, no longer pained, because I knew Mila had lived a short but vibrant life, and I'd done everything to make her happy. I realized that sometimes the strongest thing isn't fighting, but daring to let go and live on. Life had taken nearly everything. Monica, whom I'd loved deeply. Mila, my only light. But it also left me something more precious. Clarity and compassion. I was no longer the Leon who buried himself in work, trying to hold together a crumbling family. I was the Leon of now, who learned to cherish every moment, every breath, and knew that even in loss, there was still something worth living for. One day, passing by the park, I saw a sign about a fund for children with rare diseases. I stopped, reading each line, my heart stirring. I thought of Mila, of her days in the hospital bed, of other families in the hospital struggling with bills and fears as I had. Without much thought, I contacted the fund, offering to help. I began quietly contributing, donating money, supporting struggling families, and sometimes visiting the hospital to talk with kids fighting illnesses. I didn't share my story or mention Mila, but each time I looked into those children's eyes, I saw her. Her strength, her optimism, her love for life. I didn't do it for recognition or praise. I did it for Mila, to let her love ripple outward, to keep her paintings and dreams alive in the world. Each time I helped a family pay for medicine or brought a picture book to a child in the hospital, it felt like fulfilling a small dream from Mila's happiness map. And though it didn't erase the pain, it made it lighter. Sometimes at gatherings with colleagues or friends, younger people asked me about marriage and family. They were curious, wanting to know how I overcame loss to become the calm, successful man they saw. Leon with a quiet sadness. I'd smile, sip my coffee, and say, "Don't wait until you lose something to cherish it. Don't stay silent too long because silence can kill even a love. They nodded, but I knew they couldn't fully understand. Only those who've lost what's most precious know that unspoken words and missed moments are the deepest wounds. Each night before bed, I opened Mila's little diary, reading her scrawled words. I no longer cried, only smiled, feeling her presence in every page. Mila taught me how to love rightly, how to live with gratitude even when life is cruel. And I knew though she was gone, I'd carry that love with me to the end of my days. My story closes not with sorrow, but with a simple lesson. All pain passes if you love rightly and live with gratitude. I stood by Lake Oswego, watching the moonlight reflect on the water, feeling my heart lighten. Mila was gone, but she left me an invaluable gift. A heart that knows how to love, forgive, and live for what's good. I walked on, carrying her smile, knowing that no matter what, I'd never be alone.